Hello friends, I hope all is well. Now today I want to do something a little bit different than usual. Now just a quick warning, nobody take this as like, oh my god, this is serious, but I've decided to take a little step away from Red Dead. Not anything too major, I'm not completely giving up on the game because it's my baby, no I would never do that. But I've decided that because this is a channel, it's commentary, I'm a game journalist, I should talk about more than one game. I think it just makes sense. It makes common sense. But I've decided to kind of steer away and talk about other games. But a quick warning, I actually have a really special interview in September with a really important Red Dead member. So stay tuned for that, and I can't wait to share it with you guys even further. We don't have a date planned yet, I just know it's late September. So quick warning. So moving on, today I've decided, well just over time I've decided that it's probably best to do a series, something to get people more interested in games, maybe think of it in a different light. I know like when you play a game you just get to know the character like through the lens that you're playing. So say you're playing Arthur Morgan, let's go into Red Dead anyway. Say we're playing Red Dead and you're just seeing Arthur from his perspective now, and then later on when he catches TB. So that's when we see it in a different lens, but we haven't seen his life previous. So we only know bits and pieces like about his father and about his mother. I don't believe he had any siblings, but we also know later on he had a son. So that's like all the stuff that we know about him. But I'm obsessed with Googling characters from video games, and I like looking up them and seeing more about their past. Even if it's false or not true to the narrative, I think it's nice to have that to kind of, when we learn that stuff, we can look at it and then apply that to when we're playing the video game. So today, I've recently gotten close to one particular character in gaming. And it's really strange because when I play a game, I kind of have to play it a couple of times to kind of get into it, get used to the character. Like Joel Miller is one of my favourite characters in gaming, but I didn't love him immediately. I think I had to play it a couple of times before I was like, yes, I love this guy so much. I would literally die for Joel. But this character I got into immediately. I don't know how. I think it's because I heard so many good things about the game at first, and then I played it but with not a lot of knowledge of what the game actually was, whereas The Last of Us and Red Dead I did know quite a bit about. And this character is Tommy Angelo in Mafia. Now, I've not played the original Mafia, I've played the definitive edition that came out almost a year ago, which is absolutely crazy. I think it's unusual. I didn't realise how new it was, if that makes sense. Like, the definitive edition came out almost a year ago, but I didn't realise it was that young, if that makes sense. I know the other game is nearly 20 years old, and I've not played that, but I have a PlayStation 1 at home, so I'm going to give that a try. So I'm playing it over on my Twitch, WhatWouldKaySay, and I'm really looking forward to telling you guys all about Tommy, because when I found out this information about the character, it did make more sense to me to replay the game and look at it with the perspective that I have now about Tommy. So yeah, my new series that I've decided to make up on the spot is basically get to know a bit about the character and then let's play the game together, even though I've already started playing it. So yeah, this is what it's going to be, and I'm hoping to find out a bit about Don Salieri or Sam, because I don't know who actually is the main antagonist of the game. It's quite hard to tell between the two. I would say Salieri, but Sam did a full 180 on us later on in the game, just a spoiler. But yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to find out more about these characters. So without further ado, this is the story of Mafia, but through the eyes of Tommy Angelo. Thomas Angelo was born April 5th, 1900 in Sicily. His father was Marco Jr. and his wife was Maria. They had 3 children, Thomas Angelo, Marco Jr. and Isabella. So Marco Sr. was a plantation manager, so yeah, he was one of those guys. I don't know if he was very strict or whatever you want to call it, but I believe that he must have had some sort of firm hand. He must have been pretty stubborn, pretty firm but fair. I don't quite know, but I can only imagine that was how he was. But in 1904, when Tommy was 4 years old, the plantation that his father worked at, managed, owned, whatever you want to call it, it was foreclosed by a moneylender, and that ended up putting them in poverty. So they had to move from Sicily to somewhere safer or somewhere they could afford. So in this case, they immigrated to America. After a month at sea, they ended up in Empire Bay. So Empire Bay is pretty well known in the Mafia world. I think it was more taking place in Mafia 2. They eventually settled in Lost Heaven. I'm reading that correctly? Yes, I keep saying Lost Haven. I keep saying Lost Haven, but it's Lost Heaven. And that's kind of like a mixture of different real life cities. I believe there's a bit of New York in there, Chicago. The bridge reminds me of San Fran. So yeah, so they eventually settled there. And basically, his father ended up working at the harbour, and he ended up working there for 15 years solidly. Very hard work, I imagine, probably very heavy. Probably, I imagine, very different from plantation life. I think he had more control there, and I can't imagine how much of a kick that must have been for him to kind of like go to a place full of power where he's controlling people, obviously. Like, I'm not going full on into plantation, but oh my god. But yeah, I think this would be a hard change for all of them. And eventually he worked there for 15 years until his death, so Tommy was 19. So eventually, Tommy being that age, I think that's, you know, his education over, whatever you want to say. But he later on moved into work of his own. So Tommy started beginning to work in a road crew. So they were building the highways of America, so that's a really big deal, but it took a lot of moving around, and he worked there for about 7 years, I would say. That's what the timeline's telling me. But he had to live in camps for very long periods of time. He really just had the people that he was working for. He wasn't very close to his family, and he was away for very long periods of time. So I think at some point he got very bored of it. He lasted for a very long time, I think, but he ended up just getting quite bored and said, I'm tired of moving around. So he ended up moving back to Lost Heaven, where he bought his first taxi with the money that he'd saved. Now, he was a taxi driver during the Prohibition, so I imagine that was really difficult. Like, it was very hard for him to make money, make any kind of fair profit, anything like that. But Tommy was a very proud man. He was really happy with all that he had. That I used that saying completely wrong there, but he was very proud of the things that he had. He was proud to work for the things that he got, and he was just really hardworking. And as we've seen from his father, that's exactly what he was like. So during the Great Depression, it was obviously really difficult, very hard to make money, and but Tommy kept his head up, and he kept going with it, even though he was making barely any money. He ended up taking some of the jobs that his colleagues couldn't do because they were in way worse shape than he was. And, you know, he probably wasn't the most happy with it, but I imagine that he saw it as money. He's working hard for that money, and he was more than happy to do so. But although it was boring, really intense work, he at least got a little bit of fun later on. So he bought the taxi in 1926, and in 1930, something very interesting happened. His taxi life didn't become so boring. It's later revealed to us in game that Tommy preferred to work nights, and this is mainly because it was less hassle and a better fare. So one day when Tommy was taking a smoke break, out of the corner was all this gunfire and a car crash and all sorts, and it turns out the corner that Tommy was parked came out Sam Trapani and Paulie Lombardo, and they were running away from Morello's gang. So Tommy didn't know the business at the time, so he was being held at gunpoint, and he said, and Sam told him if he doesn't get him out of here, then he's going to be in trouble. So with being held at gunpoint, Tommy used all of his driving skills and his knowledge of the city to kind of maneuver himself away from the gang and over a bridge into Little Italy to safety. So it turns out that they pulled up to Salieri's bar, and it was revealed to him that they were indeed members of the Salieri family. So basically, he waited from instruction by Polly and Sam, and Sam came out with this big wad of cash, and it was enough to basically buy him a new car. So legitimately, he was sitting there with all that money, and he was like, what do I do with this? I can fix my cab, but I could buy a new cab. And I can imagine how crazy that must have felt. Like, he spent 7 years working in this road crew, and all that money that he saved up over 7 years was enough to pay for a cab. His cab that he's owned, his little baby, all sorts. So he got it fixed up, and I believe he was offered more work from the Salieri family, but he said no. He just didn't want anything involved with that. So he later on got on with this job, got his car fixed up. And later on, it was the Morello family came back, found Tommy, and started to smash up his car, his taxi. So that was his moneymaker. That was, if he didn't have a cab, he wouldn't have a job. So that must have been a really hard knock. Again, Tommy is a very hardworking and, again, I can't say proud individual. That sounds like something completely different. I think I'm getting my words mixed up. But he was a very hardworking man, and anybody kind of destroying his property, and I assume everyone will have the same feeling. He was not happy, but obviously he was getting attacked as well, so he got the hell out of there. So he ended up running back to Salieri's bar, and Polly scared the guys away with a shotgun. And when he got into the bar just to kind of calm down, and they ended up taking him to the Don, the leader of the Salieri family. And basically he said, you know, do you want us to go after him? What do you want us to do? And he said, all I want is a place to go where I can get something back on them. And, you know, I think they were expecting him to go full on nut job and kill everyone, but no. He just wanted to get back at the guys who hit his car up. So him and Polly ended up going to one of their garages and ended up just smashing up all of their cars and throwing Molotovs and beating some guys up. And again, after Polly said, let's steal one of their cars, they ended up heading back, running away from police, and obviously Tommy using his skills again, they got out of there. So heading back to Morello's bar, what am I saying? No, heading back to Salieri's bar, the Don once again ushered him in and said, you know, how did it go? And it went very well. And even Polly was kind of singing Tommy's praises. And it turns out that the Don was like, look, you're a good driver, you know what you're doing, and you also know our beef with the Morellos. So he kind of just got ushered into the family. He said, you've got a future here, how would you like it? And he was like, sure. And he understood the code of loyalty as well, which I think is really good. And I think Tommy would know that with what his father's been in and got involved in. And I think, again, Tommy is just a really trustworthy person. And so, yeah, I think he was a good addition to the gang, and that's when he was officially named a family member. But again, Tommy, as I've just explained, he wasn't into, like, I don't think he wanted to really use a gun or kill anyone or anything like that. He just wanted to kind of get back at these people. He didn't really have a real reason to kill anybody. But his whole life started to change when he got further and further into the gang. So Tommy had many successful years working with the Salieri gang. He ended up doing some robberies, he had to kill some people, all kinds of stuff. But the one job that kind of deemed his loyalty and all sorts was when he did a very last second out of the blue race for the Salieris. So basically Morello's gang beat up the guy that the Salieris were meant to race for. He was in the hospital, and the Don said, look, you're our best wheelman, can you drive? And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And let's not talk about that race. it was very stressful. I was doing it on Twitch and I ended up turning it off and doing it myself because I was screaming way too much. But after you win that race, it's like your respect has gone up tenfold. The gang has won a lot of money this race. And you also win a lot of respect from Sarah. And Sarah is Luigi, the barman from the Salieri's bar's daughter. And, you know, they have a little moment or two together and it's quite sweet. And I think Tommy's a hopeless romantic in my opinion, maybe because I just like him so much. But basically, they start this little relationship. It was a kind of thing where they keep hidden from the gang. I think it's quite difficult with that kind of thing. Like, you wouldn't know if maybe the Don would get angry if they got together, or Luigi would, but I think Luigi knew. Because one point, Tommy had to walk Sarah home because a bunch of these thugs were hanging outside her apartment and they were rapists and they were just horrible, horrible men. So Tommy ends up beating these guys up and kind of teaching them a lesson. And he gets injured in the process and Sarah takes him up to her apartment. She stitches him up and she tells him about her own family life, where her mother was quite a mean drunk, and Luigi, he is very protective, obviously, over his daughter. And, you know, they have this little moment, and I read, like, I had to do research to do this, and I read that in the original game they slept together after this, and I was kind of like, no. It's revealed throughout the game that she's a virgin, or at least they're joking about it. I don't think they did sleep together, especially in the definitive edition. Well, they did in the game because I've seen a photo of them, you know. But yeah, in the definitive edition, they didn't sleep together until obviously they've had their child. But no, I still don't understand that personally. But hey, so obviously the mob life started to get a bit wild. It was a bit too much. There's a lot of killing, and what the player sees himself is that Tommy had a real moral compass. He would stand, and when he was about to kill somebody, he'd always have this kind of hesitation. Like after the Don found out that Sarah's attackers were still alive and whatnot, he was basically sent to beat them up even further, not kill them, but just beat the shit out of them, that their mothers wouldn't even love them, was the phrase. And so yeah, Tommy was all game for that, and Tommy and Polly, once again, ended up chasing them into this bit where they crashed, and the Morellos were very, very injured. In fact, they thought one of them was dead already. And Polly said to him, "Go on, that was your girl, get rid of him." And he did stand there with the gun, but he was very hesitant. He stood there and you could tell that he really didn't want to do it, and Polly just popped him. And he even told him, if you're going to hesitate like that, you're going to die. There's nothing. And you saw it that he was shocked. Tommy was completely frozen, and I do like that in his character arc. Because if you're in a mob gang, you do expect them to have no morals, just in the head, let's kill every single person. I know, like, people who have been in mobs are probably going to watch this being like, excuse me, we did have a moral compass. But I think a lot of them are very hardcore. So yeah, it turns out that just a lot of missions, Tommy was very held back. He just didn't want to do it. And even later on, there was a time when he had to put a bomb on somebody's car. I can't remember at this very moment. But ended up that somebody else, like his wife, the person that he was meant to kill, got into the car and it exploded, and he was in shock. He couldn't believe it. That was when he decided, like, I can't keep doing this. And even beforehand, I think it was a deal, like I don't know if it was a gun deal or I can't remember, but it was a thing between the Salieris and just another thing, and they were looking for the people that they were meant to deal with, and Sam wasn't there. They couldn't find him anywhere, and it turns out he was shot. He was really injured, and A lot of people had to die that night. A lot of, I don't know if it was the Morellos, I genuinely can't remember at this very moment, but they got attacked, and while Sam was bleeding out, Tommy had to kill a lot of people. And he came back to the apartment, I think he was sharing it with Sarah, and he proposed to her. He was petrified. He wanted to be with Sarah for however long he had left, because he knew in this life that he would have died any second. And again, I love that with Tommy. I think he's just a really, underneath all the bravado of him being this really big man, big scary, I'll kill anyone, like we're shooting him no problem in game, we're shooting people no problem, but as soon as we're in a cutscene, he's very much like, I can't do this. And you know, I think I was a little bit on the fence, and then looking back at seeing him be really like scared to pull the trigger, whereas in a gameplay bit before we were just popping everyone we could see. But yes, he proposes to Sarah, I think in 1934, maybe later, I can't quite remember. But that was after a hell of a lot of stuff happened, and I really feel for Tommy. I really like him as a character because of that moral compass. I think his mother must have been really, really soft, and his father, he respected him so much. So later on in the game, towards the end, Tommy ended up marrying Sarah, and they had a child together. So at one point, Polly started to kind of lose faith in himself, I guess. He was kind of like, I'm doing all this work and the Don's not seeing it. He's not really appreciating anything. I'm really bored. I really want to rob a bank. Can you help me? To Tommy. And Tommy was like, no, the Don's gonna go off his mind. Are you joking? And so he was like, okay, just sleep on it. Just think about it. I still want to do it. But so obviously all this was happening, and the Don asked Sam, Polly, and Tommy to do a diamond deal, or what they thought was a diamond deal. So before I go on, the Don was very against drugs. He didn't want anything, any dope or anything done, like them using it within his premises. He didn't want any kind of deals going on with it, because that'll just bring really unnecessary attention. Like very easy, unnecessary attention. And so he was very against that. But when, after the deal kind of went south, but they still got all the stuff, they took it back to the Salieri bar, and it turns out the Don was actually in on it. He knew that there was drugs, and he's been in this ring for ages. So that's really going against everything that the Don stood for. And Tommy started to really question it. He was like, this is not the same man that I was supposed to follow. He really didn't believe in it, and he just thought that the Don was talking out of his ass this whole time. And he was like, I've killed so many people for stuff that you believe in, and now I'm getting myself into more and more trouble. And I'm watching all of my friends die. So basically, he took Polly up on the deal for the bank robbery, and he didn't tell anybody because they thought they were going to get in trouble, so they just went ahead and did it. They were successful, and they took all this stuff to Sam's club that he owned. And when Tommy came along to Polly's apartment later, it turns out that Polly was shot dead. He went along and called Sam and was like, oh my god, Polly's dead, somebody shot him, I think it was the Morellos, blah blah blah. And Sam, sounding really panicked, he was like, okay, just come over, I'll help you with the money when you get out of here. So when he comes along, I think it was an observatory or an art gallery or something, he ends up going there, and it turns out that Sam was the one that killed Polly. And I think it was because of all the trouble that they'd caused, and he was very much the Don's bitch, let's just say. That's the only way I could explain it. But so when Tommy finds out that Sam's killed his best friend, he obviously goes nuts. He kills all the goons that Sam's gone after, and he, in Sam's dying words, he's like, look, you've got the money, take it and get the hell out. You've got time, you can run away. You can get out of here and keep Sarah and your child safe. And Tommy was like, no, I'm not gonna let you get away with killing, or let you live after killing my best friend. So he shot him and he left. So later on, he ends up going to a detective in 1938, and yeah, it was a lot. He ended up spilling everything about the Salieri family. Like, the whole game that we were playing was all the stories that Tommy was telling. So everything that we play in the game has been spilled to the detective. And the detective says, look, you could tell me all this, but because you've been part of the Morel gang, I need to take you in too. But I think because he's been handing all this information over, he's been given some sort of plea deal. So Tommy and everybody else was arrested. He testified against Salieri, and he was in jail for 8 years. When he got out, his life became kind of normal again. They were in a kind of witness protection scheme, and he kind of lived a very normal, happy life with Sarah and his daughter. And his daughter even got married, and he was talking about how important family was at her wedding and all sorts. And at the very end of the game, I believe it was in 1958, I'm not entirely sure, but it ends up he was one day watering his lawn, and Vito Scaletta and Joe Barbaro from Mafia 2 jump out of a car and they say, Tommy Angelo, and he's like, yes. I remember that well, yes. And then he's like, Mr. Salieri sends his regards, and Joe pops out a shotgun and shoots him on the lawn. But Tommy, once again, very humble in himself, he said to Sarah, she was crying over his body, or his dying body, he said, it's okay, I knew this was coming, you know, and just how much, so happy for all the years that Sarah had given him. And it was a really sad ending, but I think in all of our hearts we knew it was going to happen. And I loved that in Mafia 2, that we ended up having to drive to that scene and doing the thing. It was so cool. But no, poor Tommy. I think in my head I'm really happy that Tommy went and ended up rioting at the Salieris, because there was so much bloodshed that was so unnecessary. I mean, necessary in the gang world, but I think, again, with Tommy's moral compass, he never wanted that. And I think in his heart, that was the right thing to do. And I think with jail as well, it's like he looked back on his life and said, just how many years ago was I a cab driver? I didn't have to have all this drama going into my life. And yeah. So yeah, I know I've rambled a lot in this video. This is my first video, guys, and I have researched it, and even though I'm kind of talking out my bum a lot in this, I have tried and I have researched. I just need to know more of the dates. But again, because I'm replaying the game and not jotting down the dates like a normal person, I decided to just kind of wing it. But again, this is a really fun game. I love it. The reason why I kind of drew myself into this game was because it kind of reminded me of GTA, but like a different kind of GTA. Like, also like L.A. Noire, because it's that same time period. But I think the mob also interested me too. I love real crime stuff. I think it's really interesting. But yes, I also want to give a massive shout out to Andrew Bongiorno, who plays Tommy Angelo. It's so funny because I was talking to Andrew the other day on Instagram, and he's a lovely guy, I'll add. He's Australian, which I was very shocked to hear because I watched some interviews of him. But I asked him if his name was a stage name, because his name is like the most perfect Italian name I've ever heard in my life. Like, Bongiorno, can you get any more Italian? But I asked him, he's like, no, my family are Sicilian. So that blew my mind. I think that's really an extra bit of cool, because that's where Tommy was from. Tommy's Sicilian, and he's Sicilian. That's just an extra cool thing. Sorry, I'm rambling now, but yeah, I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope to make more of these. If you enjoyed it, let me know. I know it was very rambly, but it was really fun. I love Mafia, just such a good game. If you haven't played it, I'm currently playing it on my Twitch. Again, I don't have a streaming schedule because of work. It's really difficult. and I know I'm really tired and out of breath, but there was a lot of talking to do. But yeah, I have some really exciting interviews coming up in the future. Again, on Andrew Bongiorno is on that list, and so is Rick Pasqualone, who plays Vito Scaletta in Mafia 2. Also with the guy that plays Sam, it's Don DePetta, I believe his name is. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up, and I really look forward to talking further about it. Again, if you liked this series, please give me a shout. Please tell me what you want to hear from next. I'd love to do some more Red Dead stuff, even though I did say I'm walking away from it. I want to kind of talk a bit more about the Don. I keep saying Don as if that's his name, but it's not. It's something else. I like how I'm like, I know so much about this game. I really don't. I just know a bit about the timeline. But I did this once again because I like the idea of knowing about Tommy's past before we play into the game. Because that's, again, talking more into his moral compass and why he is the way that he is. So yeah, thank you all for joining me. I know this video was really rambly. I am working on it. And I know this quality isn't brilliant either. But again, I am still very new and I'm trying to figure this all out and make a good stream. I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you are interested, please subscribe and push the bell for notifications. Also follow me on Twitter, which is KTheRelator, and my Instagram, which is K_Simpson11. What do you guys want to see next? I mean, I want to do more game commentary and I want to talk through the whole story of Mafia, and I feel like I have done it, but just very rambly. Again, if this is something that you have enjoyed, please let me know because I would love to do more of this. And I just hope you all have a lovely, beautiful day and just remember that you are enough. See ya!